Nelson Mandela's life story is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the fight for justice, and the transformative power of forgiveness. His journey is not just one of personal struggle, but of collective triumph over injustice, and his impact is felt not only in South Africa but across the world. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the village of Imvezo, in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. He belonged to the Thembu royal family, but his father, Gadla Henry Mpikanyiswa, was stripped of his title after a dispute with a colonial magistrate. Mandela was then raised by his mother, and his early years were marked by traditional African values and a connection to his heritage. He was given the name Rolihlahla, which means pulling the branch of a tree, or troublemaker, in Xhosa, foreshadowing his future role in challenging the system. Mandela's formal education began at a local Methodist school, where he was given the English name Nelson by his teacher. He later attended the University of Fort Hare, an institution for black students, and then went on to study law at the University of Witwatersrand. Activism and the fight against apartheid. Mandela's journey into politics began in 1941 when he joined the African National Congress, ANC, an organization that was at the forefront of the struggle against the apartheid regime. Apartheid, a system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination, had been entrenched in South Africa since 1948 under the National Party government. Mandela became increasingly involved in the ANC's resistance to apartheid, initially through non-violent means, but soon realizing that more radical actions were necessary. In 1944, he helped found the ANC Youth League, which advocated for the more aggressive pursuit of equal rights for black South Africans. In 1948, the National Party introduced the full-scale system of apartheid, which legally enforced segregation and discrimination in every aspect of life: education, healthcare, employment, and even public spaces. Mandela and other leaders of the ANC believed that passive resistance alone would not be enough to overthrow the oppressive regime. Defiance Campaign and the Rivonia Trial in 1952, Mandela became the national volunteer-in-chief of the ANC's Defiance Campaign, which encouraged civil disobedience and nonviolent protests against apartheid laws. In 1955, he played a key role in drafting the Freedom Charter, which called for equal rights for all South Africans, regardless of race. But as the struggle continued, the apartheid government cracked down on the opposition. In 1961, after years of nonviolent protest had failed to produce meaningful change, Mandela and the ANC made the difficult decision to form an armed wing called Umkhonto we Sizwe, Spear of the Nation. Mandela led sabotage campaigns against government infrastructure and was arrested in 1962 for leaving the country without permission. His most famous trial came in 1963, when he was arrested during the Rivonia Raid, a covert operation that targeted ANC leadership. He and several of his colleagues were charged with sabotage and treason. In his defense, Mandela delivered a speech that would become one of his most iconic moments. He said, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment and sent to the notorious Robben Island prison, where he would spend 18 of his 27 years in confinement. His time on Robben Island was grueling, marked by hard labor, poor living conditions, and isolation from the outside world. However, Mandela used his time in prison to educate himself further, and he also became a symbol of resistance to apartheid. International pressure and the end of apartheid. While Mandela and his fellow political prisoners languished in jail, the fight for their freedom continued outside South Africa. Global campaigns to boycott South African goods and divest from companies doing business with the apartheid regime gained momentum. International pressure, combined with internal unrest, led the apartheid government to begin negotiating. Mandela's release was the result of growing domestic and international pressure. On February 11, 1990, after 27 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela was freed from Robben Island. His release marked the beginning of the end for apartheid. Over the next few years, the South African government, led by President F.W. de Klerk, began negotiating with the ANC to dismantle apartheid laws and create a democratic system in which all races will have equal rights. The first democratic elections. He urged both black and white South Africans to work together to build a new, democratic nation. In 1994, South Africa held its first multiracial elections, in which people of all races were allowed to vote. The ANC won a resounding victory, and Mandela became South Africa's first black president. Presidency and legacy. As president, Mandela focused on national reconciliation and building a rainbow nation, in which South Africa's diverse people could coexist peacefully. He oversaw the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which aimed to heal the wounds of the past by uncovering the truth behind apartheid-era atrocities and offering amnesty to those who confess their involvement in human rights violations. Mandela's presidency was marked by efforts to address the severe economic disparities left by apartheid, though full economic equality proved elusive. Nevertheless, Mandela's leadership helped transform South Africa from a racially segregated country into a democracy. He stepped down after one term in 1999, citing his desire to avoid becoming a dictator and his belief that the country should move forward with new leadership. Later years and death. Mandela's health declined in the later years of his life. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2001 and suffered from several respiratory infections. On December 5, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. His death was met with an outpouring of grief, but also an outpouring of admiration and gratitude for his legacy of peace, justice, and reconciliation. Nelson Mandela's life is a profound narrative of the fight for justice in the face of overwhelming adversity. From his early days as a lawyer and activist, to his long imprisonment, to his role as the first black president of South Africa, Mandela became a symbol of hope and transformation. His ability to forgive his oppressors and his insistence on national unity and reconciliation after decades of brutal oppression made him a revered figure not just in South Africa, but across the world. Mandela's legacy is one of courage, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to justice. He remains a beacon of hope for those fighting for freedom, equality, and human dignity everywhere.